Okay, so I'm Cynthia Becker, and I'm the host of the reality series CPS the Horror Stories. I'm not an attorney or a social worker, but I'm a mom who did lose her kids to CPS, and after fighting for 2 years, got them back. The point of this show is just to bring out the light and the truth on CPS and how corrupt they are and the devastation that they cause families by removing children from families that love them. So, Rose, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Rose. I don't really know what to say. I'm an independent contractor for the past 6, 7 months now. I have 3 children that I've lost to DCFS. I'm still currently fighting, but my rights were terminated last. I believe I appealed in October. It was last May, and that was also the last time that I had saw them. Um, I didn't really get a fair chance to say goodbye as my son got sick at the visit and he had to leave early. And then my oldest, they've always since the beginning cut my visits with her, so I didn't really get much of a chance with them. And regularly I was supposed to get 2 hours a week with them.
And are they with family or no?
No, I didn't have any family here in Illinois, so they were adopted out through the different foster cares, and they are separated. But okay, so my 2 youngest are with foster parents that are cousins with my oldest foster parents.
Okay. So tell me how CPS came in your life and why they were there. Were you in foster care as a child?
So yes, I have been in foster care as a child, but that's not why they, you know what I mean, were led into it, because I wasn't in very long, thankfully. I experienced it for about a year and a half. My mom was able to get me back. Um,
Why were you in foster
but
care?
I was in foster care because my mom had she had gotten, hold on one second, I've got a weenie dog getting up here getting into stuff. um she had gotten into trouble when she was younger. You know, we all kind of make mistakes, and she kind of ran with the wrong crowd. So you run with the wrong crowd, you get hit with stuff that's really not your fault. Even when you do have problems and it's not your stuff. So she got sent to jail for possession of marijuana when it was a huge thing. It's not so much anymore, but back then in the 90s it was. And I got taken away for, it was right after my dad died. I was 8 years old, and I got taken away for a year and a half in Cisco, Texas. And it was a pretty scary experience. I don't remember much from when I was little. I guess I kind of blocked it out. But one of the things that I remember very clearly is that night, because I remember I can't remember why, but we were at the lake, which wasn't too far from my house, and some cops showed up, and we had gotten rushed. And I remember because I was a child and I had to pee, and we're at the lake with no, porta potties or nothing, so I went over by a bush by the water to go pee. And the cops kind of showed up, and they rushed in and they arrested both my brother and my mother. And then I remember the cops trying to, I guess, persuade me. I was crying not to take my family to jail. I remember them trying to take them to jail, and I was trying to tell them, like, don't take my kids to jail, or don't take. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous. Don't take my family to jail, not my mom and my brother. And he had said, well, if you can tell me whose it is, then I won't take one of them to jail, and I'll only take one of them. And so he wanted me to choose between if it was my brother's or my mom's. And that's a really hard decision to put on a child when they're little. So I didn't say anything, and I just started crying. And so then CPS pulled up, And this is my first run-in with CPS ever. And they took me to foster care, and I showed up at my foster parents' house at, I believe, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, very late. And that experience itself was pretty bad, because thankfully I wasn't abused or nothing in foster care. And like I said, I wasn't there for very long, but my foster mom hated me. I would never call her mom, and that's what she hated the most, because she was not my mom, and I never could bring myself to call her mom.
So, how long were you with her, you said?
For about 1.5 years.
Okay, and
I remember I made things kind of hard for her, because things were happening around me in the town that we were in, like right down the street, and it's more of like unbelievable stuff. Like I tried to tell my caseworker, and she didn't believe me about it. But a little girl had actually disappeared, which was my friend's little sister, and it was Christmas Eve. The fire department had brought us a bunch of stuff for foster kids, and I remember I had just gotten a new bike, and I was playing on it. And I remember my friend Melissa's little sister had disappeared, just for like a few minutes, but enough to where we noticed she shouldn't have, by an old church at the end of the block. But she came back, she had a cut on her back. And I was concerned about it. And then we were talking about it, just little kids trying to investigate what happened. And we were followed. There was a guy that had followed us, and he kind of just kept up with the same speed that we were going. So I had, I notified my foster parent, and I told the caseworker about it, but nobody had believed me about it. So they kind of sent me to, I don't know the name of the home, but it was somewhere in Texas. It was like a troubled teens home or something. And my mom got me back actually from there, but I spent, after the foster care, I spent some of my time in the children's troubled teen home thing. And there were locks on the doors. You couldn't go to regular school. You had to eat what you were given. You did not have any options. If you didn't, you go to the quiet room. And I guess this kind of exposes a lot of stuff, but
yeah.
The quiet room it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a soundproof barrier room where children were beat. And some of it is you didn't have privacy, and if you didn't clean your room and stuff like that. So some of the things that I was very smart, so I learned not to fight back on too much, but I had to, while my mom was still doing her case plan,
Yeah.
I got visits with her once a month. I had to take a bath, and it was really disturbing, because somebody had to watch me, and I didn't understand that. And I want to say I was about 10 or 11 when I was here, and I'm not sure how long I stayed in the troubled teens home, but you would crack the door, and they said, well, we got to watch you, in case you try to do something stupid, like commit suicide or something, which I didn't even understand when I was little. And it was a guy, so it made me really uncomfortable as a young girl.
A man watching you take a bath?
Yeah. They had to watch you with the door cracked open. They had to keep an eye on you. And it was really disturbing. There were rules we had to follow. If your room wasn't completely spotless by a certain time, you could go to the quiet room, you could get in trouble. I remember I had a roommate, and I can't remember her name, but I had befriended her, and she had scoliosis really bad. And to the point to where she was hunched over. She was a little black girl. She was really sweet. And she had, other than physical problems, she had some mental problems, but we were really good friends, and I understood her. Well, if she, would, I guess, rebel against them in any way, even if she's not intentionally meaning to rebel, they would put her in the quiet room. They beat kids in that quiet room. And there was I think there was one time my mom came to visit with me at this home, and my stepdad and the caseworker, and she was in reunification process. So she was visiting me, and sometimes she could take me away from there for a visit. But I believe it was when I was getting close to being able to go with my mom, and I knew that because she was almost done with her services. I had a phone call with her. I think it was like a week before I was actually released from the place and able to go home. I had a phone call with her, and I was crying because of everything that I had witnessed in that home. And I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell my mom, and I was scared. But the guy had threatened me, and he told me, if you tell your mom, you're never going to see your mom again, and we'll withhold visits and everything. And so I kept my mouth shut, and I never did anything. And that was a whole nother corrupt organization. That wasn't even CPS. That was, I don't know, like a home for troubled teens that they did this at. And from there, my mom had introduced me to my stepdad, which had actually, she's still with today. She's been with him for 16 years. He stood up in the courtroom and with my mom, because they had actually met in rehab, and they had gotten clean together and stuff, and stated, I'll take responsibility, full on legal responsibility, physical, whatever, for this child. Just release her back into her mother's custody. And at this point, they had both had a really great job. My mom was a CNA. And she's been a CNA for many years, but she was clean, and she was a CNA. And they had gotten, I believe it was a trailer. And my stepdad worked in the oil field. I believe he said he was a groundsman. He did kind of the harder stuff in the oil field. And so they were stable in the judge's eyes, so they were able to get me back. So from there, I was able to get back with my family. And that was when I was really young. But then when I had to actually deal with DCFS on the other side of that, was when I was growing up. And
So really fast, just to conclude, did the stepdad end up adopting you?
So I guess not legally, like I guess there's no like legal paperwork he's adoption, but I mean, he's my stepdad. I know him as that. I lived with him for many years. I call him on Father's Day. It's kind of the father I really never had.
Yeah. So they ended up doing good together.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
My stepdad's still with her today, and I go visit them. They live in Oklahoma whenever I can, which is really easy for me because as an independent contractor, all I need is gas money, and then I can work while I'm down there. So
right.
Really nice. They've supported me through all of this. But my stepdad and my mom, I couldn't live with them forever. I tried branching out on my own, and back when I was, I don't know, I started getting at that teenage to where I was ready to explore and everything. And my mom had kind of kept me sheltered all my life, not intentionally to hurt me or neglect me in any way, but she just kind of kept me sheltered, as in like I couldn't go out and do things that other people did. She really didn't want to teach me how to get my driver's license, stuff like that was really important that you needed in life. Mm-hmm. She wouldn't, because she really just did not want me to grow up, which I can understand. But so me and my mom, we butt heads all the time growing up. We got older because, as I had told you, when my mom and my brother had both went to jail, they cut contact. So for many, many years, up until I believe it was 2015. So this happened back in the 90s. And in 2015, they finally got back in contact. And then I got back in contact with my brother and stuff. So it was really rough, and we would always fight about, I would always say as a child, you don't want nothing to do with my brother. Why can't you forgive him for whatever it is? It's been many, many years, and I didn't understand her grudge against it. And that was the whole reason she lost me. I guess the whole thing was a giant setup, and she lost me because of this giant setup. So she really couldn't forgive him. So honestly, he's only been back in my life a few years now. It's been 5 years now. And I call him every day too now. But I miss that bond I had of my brother growing
Yeah.
up. Like, we were so close, and then I lost both my protectors in one night.
Right.
And so that was really hard for me. So we'd fight all the time. And eventually I branched out and I went to Texas to stay with a friend. I was stupid and I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter. And the guy wanted to try to make it work. His name was Josh. He tried to make it work with me, or as I tried to make it work with him. And we moved back from Texas to Oklahoma to try to start a life. He got a job at like a little fast food restaurant, and I worked up until I couldn't as a waitress, because then I started having problems during the pregnancy. So at about 6.5 months, I had to stop working, and he had to take over. So it was really hard because at this point he had a license, but he had no car. We didn't have the money for a car. I didn't have a license or a car because I didn't know how to drive. And I took care. We had my daughter Callie. Well, during the pregnancy, I noticed after we got our first apartment that things had gotten kind of scary. I had noticed little things. I noticed that he had thrown. I didn't make the taquitos right or something, because I was supposed to make them taquitos, and he threw the plate at the wall and it shattered. And I was about 6 months then. So it was like little things here and there that kind of triggered me, and it upset me when I was pregnant. And there was one time where, like I said, we didn't have a car, so we kind of walked places. And I walked with him, and we had gotten an argument over something, and he ended up pinning me down in the middle of like the median by the roads. And so things were getting really bad with him. And I kept telling myself, it's going to get better when when the baby gets here. That's never true.
Yeah, it sounds really violent.
Yeah. But we ended up getting another apartment. My apartment manager that we were in did not like him at all. So we ended up getting evicted, and we moved to another apartment. And this apartment lady was really sweet. She understood my whole situation. I really let her into my life. Like, she was really sweetheart. She understood when rent was late and stuff like that. She never immediately tried to evict me. She was a good person. But the area where the apartments were, they weren't that great. So I stayed home trying to take care of my daughter for the 6 weeks thing. And this is the first time I've ever been prescribed any heavy medication. So they had given me Percocets because I had tore during the birthing process.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I wasn't used to the feeling of it. I felt very heavy, and I felt like kind of concerned that I would drop my daughter, a newborn, or run into a wall or something. Like, I was really just concerned. I was really drowsy, and I could barely really stay up after I took those. There's nothing up there for you. You're not getting the TV remote. And so I had asked Josh for help with that, and he was working 40 hours a week flipping burgers, which I'm sure can be stressful. But there was one particular night, and this is when I had really started recognizing what was going on and that it wasn't going to get better, because I needed help. I woke up in the middle of the night and I needed help changing the baby. I was really messed up on the Percocets they gave me. I was really dizzy and lightheaded. I have a extremely low tolerance for things, everything, pain, nausea, pills, everything. And so I needed that help, that assistance. And he grabbed me. I just needed his help changing a diaper. And he grabbed me by the throat and threw me into the chair and choked me. And at that point, I thought I was going to die. And I was scared. And then he, you know what I mean? So I tried to not do things to provoke him. I quit asking him for help. I did everything on my own. I did the housework. I took care of my daughter. I didn't really much talk to him unless he talked to me, and it went on a response to try to keep the peace as much as possible. I knew that there was no way I would be able to go anywhere at this point, because at this point, I have no job. I have no backup plan. So I just kept the peace as best as I could. And then eventually, after that goes by, I tried going back to work. Well, he ended up losing his job. And when he lost his job was by the time I went back to work. I had started working because the waitress place I worked at, they got shut down. So I started working at Walmart. and I was a cashier. But I needed him to watch my daughter because the state will not help you unless both parents are working or going to school, unless you're both doing something. They believe that the other parent should step up, which makes sense, but it wasn't safe. So I was worried about leaving my daughter with him. And I came home one particular day and I was getting food stamp assistance. My mom would take me to go get groceries, and I needed to go get formula and stuff. I had just gotten my WIC. So I got home after work about 3:30, and I get there and I can't find my daughter. I don't know where my daughter is. And she was, I want to say, about 4 to 6 months old. She was pretty young. And so I walk in the house. My daughter's not in her crib, in the bedroom next to my boyfriend. And at the time, he had the door closed, and I had like a long hallway, and the door's closed. And I went in there and I said, "Where is my daughter? Where's my daughter?" He's like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know where she's at. Like, how do you not know where our daughter is?" And so I, went through the house and I found her. She was literally covered, like her diaper was covered in poop and pee, and she was under the couch. Legit, like, shows he wasn't even paying attention because it's such a long hallway, and he's in his bedroom with the door shut, asleep. So I asked him what his excuse was, and he said, "Well, I stayed up playing video games all night." So I couldn't even trust him to be with my daughter. So at this point, I planned on leaving him. I was coming up with a backup plan, and I just needed the money to do it. I just needed a place to go. So after that, after I'd found out about my daughter and it was like that, like I said, my mom had taken me, so she came inside. So I grabbed Callie and I handed her to my mom. And I told her, to hold her, that it's going to get bad. I already knew it. And then me and my ex got into a shoving match. He started shoving me into walls. I threw him back into the wall, and I was like, "You don't understand. There's no grounds for our daughter to be under the couch, like 50 to 100 feet away from you, while you're asleep in the bedroom with the door. There's no excuse for this at all." So I told him that I planned on leaving and everything. And at this point, my mom took my daughter and she went and bathed her. She went and gave her a bath and shut the door while I was dealing with my daughter's dad. And I guess at this point, I mentally shut myself down and emotionally, and I didn't have any feelings for him after that. I was just planning to leave and pretended for it to be okay later, to get through until I could come up with the money. But then there was another day I came home and we had gotten into it. And I said, "I'm taking my daughter to my mother's and we're leaving for the night." And he grabbed my arm and twisted it and busted my mouth. And he didn't even call it abusive. He said that it was an accident, it was always an accident. So I wanted to get out pretty quick. So I ended up leaving as soon as my lease was up because I didn't want a eviction and I didn't want to break in the lease or I couldn't get a place. So I left and I went and stayed with my mom. And I remember him pulling the suicide card, and I was like, if you want to do that, that's on you, but I'm still leaving. And and our daughter's coming with me. I gave him the option for many, many years, have something to do with his daughter. He really just, it was just excuses after excuses after excuses. Today we are in contact. It is still excuses. And it's just really sad. But my daughter at this point, I think I lived with my mom for about 6 months till my daughter turned 1 the first time. And I had taken my daughter to California with me to stay with a friend. Someone that I had known for a few months online, not the best decision because I didn't know them long enough, but I didn't have any other decisions available to me because my mom was arguing. My stepdad and I, at this point, we didn't get along, the baby was crying. My stepdad's not getting enough sleep, and he works a very hard job. It's really not their fault. It's just there's too much going on. And then my ex is trying to cause problems. He had said he was going to try to burn our house down, and with his daughter in it, by the way. And so it was just too much. My mom was starting to have a heart trouble. She had heart palpitations, and I was considered, and she was getting lightheaded all the time. So I was concerned about her. So I thought that the best thing to do was take me and my daughter and that stress out of their life. So I went and stayed with a friend, which at the time I trusted. And like I said, when I told you I was sheltered growing up, my mom didn't really teach me much, not because she didn't want to, but because she was working all the time and she was so busy. So I didn't learn about bullying in school, and I didn't learn about, learning how to drive and trusting people. I trusted everybody that said I could trust them. Every single person I trusted, and that's where I got messed up in life. So I trusted this person, and I stayed with him, and I didn't realize he had a lot of mental issues. And at the time, in between the time that I had split up with my daughter, my oldest dad, I had started talking to a guy, like every day, and he was already, I guess I was kind of talking to him during the relationship, but it was like when I was trying to leave and when I was upset and I just needed someone to help calm me down. It wasn't like that. We had never physically met in person. We wanted to, but years went by, and I finally met him during that year. When my daughter turned 1, I had moved to California, and it turned out, unknowingly, I ended up moving to his hometown. So I got a chance with this guy, and to me, being young and stuff like that and naive, I was like, this is fate. This is totally fate. This is my little love story. And I got with him, and we wanted to be together for a while. And we ended up actually getting married because the guy that I stayed with, I believe his name was Justin, he got really jealous because of, I guess he liked me, and I told him it wasn't going to be anything like that when I came and stayed there. It was just friends, that's it. And he couldn't accept that.
Yeah, no, you can't.
Yeah. When he found out that I met what was going to be, my husband. And so he kicked us out. And when he kicked us out, stop. It was pretty bad because he was crazy. I don't know what was wrong with him. I don't know how to explain it, but he legit chased us with an axe. And it was the scariest thing because the guy that was soon to be going to be my husband and my baby's father later in life, he was on the phone. And I had my daughter, and I was running, and he was on the phone with the police. Police did nothing, by the way, because his mother technically had, I don't know what you call it. She still had responsibility, even though he was over 18 over him. She still had legal responsibility over him. Like when someone's schizophrenic, but they can't really handle this? Yeah, that's what he had. So they didn't really do anything about it. Plus, they didn't know whose jurisdiction it was because the area that we were in, it was like, it's your jurisdiction, it's my jurisdiction, and they didn't really want to mess with it. That's just the cops. And so we went to DHS for help. We went to DHS. They provided me with food stamps. They provided me with money. They did try to help me get into an apartment, but unfortunately in California, much like other places, they require really good credit, and I have not had good credit ever. So first of all, when I was 18, I started out right out the gate with identity theft. So I've never had good credit. So we kept getting denied these apartments. And even though they would pay for first month's rent and deposit, it wasn't enough for these places because you have to pass a good credit check. So eventually we realized that we cannot stay. We're going to have to talk to my parents. So I talked to my parents. I introduced them to my husband at the time. Well, he wasn't my husband yet, but he was going to be my husband at that time. And they talked about it and they called us back and said, okay, you guys can come back here. And at this point, it was just me and him and my daughter. I didn't know I was pregnant yet, but we stayed in the hotel that DHS ended up paying for us. They said that they will give us one ticket for me and my daughter to get back on a Greyhound, but that we had to come up with money for the other ticket. Well, my ex's grandma actually lived in the state we did, so he was helping her move stuff and pack things. And she said, if you help me, I'll give you the money and stuff. If you help me pack things for my move, and then you can go back with your girlfriend back to Oklahoma. So that's what he did. And this is where it gets really hard, because my daughter was just barely over 1. I believe she's 14 or 15 months at this time. We stayed in a hotel, and from day one, the hotel manager never liked me, or I guess he never liked the guy I was with. He was always just really rude. And when my ex had went to go help move to come up with the money he needed, the hotel manager would have all these sexual advances towards me. And I would tell him, no, because we had just gotten married, because the only way that he could stay with me, and I was in such a dangerous spot. I was in Merced, California, and I don't know if you know anything about it, but it's a very dangerous small town. It's where all the gangs are. People disappear. It's bad.
Okay.
So he didn't want me to be alone. Well, we had went to DHS, and they had said, well, you could get married as a joke, but it was a loophole. So we did. We figured we knew each other, and we've been wanting to be together for, over a year now, so that's great.
Yeah.
It ended up being a bad idea, but we stayed together in the hotel. That was the only way he could stay with me in the hotel, and they would pay for it. So they did. But when he was gone, the hotel manager would do sexual advances towards me, and I told him no, and it upset him. I would also tell the hotel manager, no one's come, and, they changed my sheets. My refrigerator's not working. The mini fridge was out. When is anybody going to come, dump my trash? Like, nothing. I never really got a response on it, just that, they'll come, they'll do it, and they never came by. I didn't have a do not disturb sign on my door. There was no reason. I felt at this point I was completely being just neglected by the hotel manager.
Yeah.
But I tried to ignore it the best that I could. And we tried to just, push for that goal. Get the tickets, get the money, get the ticket, go back to my mom. We're going to be safe there. My stepdad's got a job lined up for him. I can get my job back at Walmart down there because they loved me. It was just follow the goal. But I believe a week went by, and we were going to get another week. We still needed time to come up with money. So they were going to give us another week in the hotel. So we showed up at the DHS to meet my caseworker. And it was taking longer than usual to take a check. Usually it takes about 5 minutes. So we were sitting there for about 30, 40 minutes. So I was getting really anxious and scared. And then sure enough, CPS pops up. And first of all, I didn't realize CPS was right next door to DHS. I didn't even know that. And CPS pops up and says, I need you to come with me next door. So I went with them next door, and they didn't really have, any grounds. They just kind of, they said that the hotel manager let them in the room, and the hotel manager had called them, and that my room was thrashed. And when I say thrashed, like, I got the pictures later, way later, after my case had done close and got my daughter back and everything. And I mean that it was thrashed. They trashed my room. So the hotel manager legit trashed my room and called CPS on me. So they tried to use kind of dumb things. So I had a empty apple juice bottle that was in the trash can, a regular size 64-ounce bottle. It had one sip in it, and they said it fermented like alcohol. So then they said I was feeding my daughter alcohol. We had horror movies in there because I'm a big horror fanatic, and I grew up like that on scary movies. So I had the typical, Jason versus Freddy and stuff. And then my my ex had like picked up an axe out of the road, by the way, that he just happened to find later, like a little hatchet. And he was like, I'm going to keep this, just kind of a guy thing. And he put it in the drawer with my movies. Well, they took pictures of the movies and the hatchet and made it just look so horrible in court, like I was planning to be a serial killer or something. And my daughter she was kind of delayed, so she couldn't walk because part of the parts of her being delayed was my ex would keep her, and her dad would keep her when I was at work in the vibrator all the time. And while playing video games, he would bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce her with his foot. So she really didn't get the crawling, so she didn't start walking till late. So at this point, when she's supposed to be walking, she's not. She's still trying to learn how to walk. She knows how to crawl, but she's still learning to stand on her own and stuff. So she couldn't access any of this stuff. It was in a regular hotel, bedside drawer.
Yeah.
And then she was teething, so there was the fever reducer bottle, the sticker with the coupon on it. Well, whenever you take the sticker off, it's got that little adhesive sticky stuff on it.
Yes.
It got stuck on the ground, so there's like literally dirt on it, and they said that's feces, and took a picture of it and said that was feces. And I tried to like say, I tried to, set them right in court, but this is my first time on this side with them, and I didn't know that I had any rights. I've never been very smart about the law.
Right.
And my court-appointed attorney at the time, he told me, he said, just shut up. Just don't say nothing. Agree to everything they say. Sign what you have to. Just do what they say, or you'll lose your kid. And I didn't want to lose my kids, so I shut up. I didn't say nothing. So I had asked them, I said, well, we've got the tickets to go to, Oklahoma, so why can't I just have my daughter back and go? And they said, well, we're choosing to open a case on you, so you and him can go back to Oklahoma, but your daughter's staying here. So they sent me back to Oklahoma on a Greyhound, which was a 3-day bus trip of me crying because they kept my daughter there. And one of the things that upset me the most is when I had showed up to DCFS and they told me to take me over there next door, they had told me, well, we're going to take you in for a drug test. Just, I don't know why, but they wanted to take me for a drug test. So I was like, okay. So I went to do the drug test. I did my drug test right when it almost closed, because I've always kind of been big on UTIs and stuff, and people watching me, frankly, I've got severe anxiety. So that bothers me. So I didn't get it done until it closed. But then after it was done, I went back to the office, and they had told me that your daughter's going to be here when you get back. We're not taking her. When I came back, my daughter was gone. And I asked them where she was, and they said she's in foster care. And yeah, that was my first run-in with the caseworker, and I remember being so mad that I was shaking. And I've never been a violent person, but I'm not lying. I really wanted to knock her out.
Yeah.
Because she had taken my baby, and the only reason that I was still fighting in the world was my children, and she had taken my kid. So, and that was on a Friday. For some reason, everything seems to happen on a Friday to me. But on Monday, there was court. My mom had sent me money, and we stayed in a hotel for a couple days. Then when I had court, I went to court, and they decided to keep my daughter. I went back to Oklahoma, and they said, we'll do telephone court hearings, but we cannot transfer the case, but we'll do telephone court hearings with you, and you can get on your feet down there. Whatever services that's asked of in a case plan, just do them, and you'll get your kids back. I did everything and more, because I just recently got married, so I enrolled what was asked of me was parenting classes, a mental health assessment, employment of either me or my husband, because we were married at the time, so they said it's okay if you want to, stay home and be a stay-home mom. That's completely okay with us. But somebody has to be working.
Right.
They wanted parenting classes for him too, because if he was new at really being a father. So we did. And we went to, I believe it was Hope pregnancy classes, because I just found out I was pregnant with my son. And you also get little tickets to get things for like crib and stuff when you go to so many classes, and I needed all that stuff. So we went to that together. We completed the classes. And then we did a newly married and parenting class. So being able to deal with your relationship and being able to deal with kids in a newly married situation. So, and that was completely different than my regular parenting classes. It was more than basics. It taught you how to communicate. It taught you how to not use you statements and to more use I statements, like I feel like I'm upset because this happened, instead of you make me feel this way. So it was teaching us how to communicate, and it was a very hard thing for us. And so it really helped me. It also helped me get more stuff for my kids, which was great. So I went above and beyond, and I enrolled myself in another class that would help. And I went to, I did everything that I was supposed to do. I went through, I believe it was 3 caseworkers. And when I get to my 3rd caseworker, she's looking at my case and she said, I'm looking at your case and I'm trying to figure out why your kids were taken, because none of this makes any sense. The pictures here don't make any sense. Nothing. Like it was obvious. It was an empty apple juice bottle. And she's like, I see there's some laundry on the floor, but honestly, I don't see why your kids would have been taken. And so she said, just do everything you're supposed to do. So I did. And I got her, I ended up getting her back because she said, well, and I didn't get one visitation this entire time with my daughter, by the way. She got taken when she was young, and I didn't get not one visitation with her because she was all the way in California.
How long was this period?
11 months, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And they did at one point try to set up visitation with me, and they were going to fly me down there for the weekend. So, and at that point, I had tried to work at Target, but then I lost my job because I told them, like, they were like, well, you can't leave. And I was like, I need to go see my daughter for visitation. I guess I quit. I have to go. And then I quit, and I told the caseworker, I said, I already quit my job and everything. I'm ready for visitation. And she goes, well, it's not going to affect you that you quit your job or anything, because we're not requiring you to have a job because you're married and he's working, but we just don't have the funding to get you up here because they were supposed to pay for it. So I didn't get that visitation with my daughter. And it was very sad because I was really looking forward to seeing my daughter. But then December 18th came around, and I believe it was 2014 because I had lost her in 2013, like right around Easter time. And December 2014 comes around. You know, it's getting close to Christmas and everything. I'm worried. It's the 18th. I ended up getting her back December 18th. And I went down there, and they flew me down there first class. I got to spend a couple hours with my daughter, and you know what I mean, get to know her again. And then I went to court. And I went to court, and they said, you've done an amazing job, and you're the perfect example of what every mother should follow, every parent should follow. You went above and beyond what the courts requested of you, and I don't see any reason why we should keep your child. So they gave my daughter back, and the court applauded me when I walked out of the room. I stayed in a different hotel, by the way, because they tried to put me in the same hotel again. I told them, do not put me in that hotel.
Mm-mm.
And they put me in a different hotel for 2 days. Didn't have any issues at that hotel. And it was me and my daughter, and I got to have just me and my daughter time. I took her to little things around the store, not too far because I didn't have a car, but I walked down the street to like the thrift store. And then I took her to get ice cream at Dairy Queen. And it was really hard because she was quiet. My daughter was really quiet, and it was like she didn't really know who I was. And I remember that feeling of, is she ever going to get, you know what I mean, to know me? Then we left. 2 days later, we left on, I believe it was Monday again. We left on Monday and to fly back. And there was a couple of layovers in which I would take my daughter to go into the gift shop and stuff like that. And my mom showed up to pick us up in the airport, me and my daughter. My daughter was home. We were now with my family. And she was still very quiet, though. She was quiet on the plane. She was quiet in the hotel. She was quiet when I brought her home. It took her about a week to start talking and to start really bonding with any of us, me, her grandparents, my husband at the time. There was just like this wall with her, and she couldn't get past it. But after 2 days of having her back in my home, she started acting out, and she started acting out like she started randomly throwing fits, but which is expected of a child, but these weren't normal fits. She'd throw things and break things, and she'd get really frustrated really quick. She couldn't figure something out. And she stuck her finger in the cat's bottom. And I tapped her on the butt. And when I say tapped, I tapped. I did not actually spank her. I tapped her on the butt and I told her no, and I put her in a corner. And she cornered my cats and kicked it. So I'm trying to figure out where she got this behavior from. She's hurting animals.
How old is she now?
She's 8 now. She's going to be 9 in October.
No, when you got her back.
Oh, when I got her back, she was 2.
Okay.
Doing all this. And she, we were still potty training. And I had tried to do potty training with her. And she tried to grab, like, the little travel size bottles. And she tried to stick them inside of her. And I knew at this point that something is wrong with my daughter. Something is wrong. And I still had a little bit of communication with the foster parents. So I explained to her what was going on. And she said she had no idea why my daughter would be reacting this way. Why she's having so many infections if all she's really drinking is water, milk, and very rarely any juice. Recently, why she's getting red, why she's getting hurt, why she's getting yeast infections so young. And I took her to the hospital for a rape kit. After one night with us, we were trying to get her to go to sleep, and she finally went to sleep at like 2:00 a.m. And she woke up screaming, "Jordan, get off me, Jordan." And it was dark. And I was still awake. I was playing on my phone. And she ran to the corner of the bedroom. And I got up to her, I turned on the light and I said, "Baby, it's me. It's mommy. What's wrong? I'm right here. There's nobody here. Nobody's going to hurt you. I'm right here." And I tried to take her to the hospital and get help, and they told me, "Well, we can do a rape kit on her, but there's no for sure that you can figure anything out because it's been so long and a woman's made to heal so quickly for birth and stuff that there's just, if anything has happened to her, you will not know. The only thing I can tell you is if her hymen's still intact." And they said, "Well, hymen's still intact, so that's good, but that doesn't mean that nothing's happened because they heal so quickly." And I explained some of the signs, and they said that she did have some of the signs. So I wanted to get her help further, but I couldn't because in the state of Oklahoma, you have to have, at this time, I don't know if it's changed, but your child has to be of the age 5 to get help of that kind of sorts, to be checked for ADHD, anything like that, sexual trauma. They have to be at least 5. So we ended up moving later. At tax time, we had gotten our money and we moved to Washington State. My best friend was there. I had some sort of support system because my best friend was there. And she was always helpful to me. But we moved there, and it was also a dumb decision because we moved there thinking that it was going to be easy to find a place. Credit held me back again. So we stayed in a hotel until we ran out of money. And then we ended up staying with my husband's grandma. Remember I told you she's moving? Well, she was moving to Washington, and we happened to move back to Washington. She lived 20 minutes from us. So we all stayed with her, which was kind of hard because if she's a Jehovah's Witness, and the religion is very different. I'm Christian. She's very particular on chores and stuff, and I'm a very emotional person. And Kenny started cheating on me a lot, and I know, yeah, I had noticed that things were going on. So we would, we would have that typical fight. And she didn't like that. There's no fighting in my home. This is not how we live. This is disrespectful. But to me, I'm like, this is disrespectful. Like he worked overnights at Walmart, and he was talking to other girls, and it was really upset with me. And at one point, after trying so hard to try to get a place there and we couldn't do it, even when we were living with her, I was like, okay, that's it. We have to go back to Oklahoma. My mom's the only kind of help we have. So we were going to go back. And I told him about it. And he said, well, you and the kids can go back to Oklahoma, but I'm staying here. And I said, well, we're married. This is your son. And you claim my daughter as your own. Why would you want to leave your family behind? He didn't. He just said that I'll catch up with you in a couple months. And it's not realistic in any way. It's very selfish. So we didn't leave, and things just continued to get worse. He got really physical with me. And this is when we kind of lost our place to stay with her, and it got really bad. He started, I think this was the fight that kicked off with his cell phone. So I said, how could you be like that? And he had previously, before he met me, he had lost custody of a kid that he didn't really, honestly, he didn't get a fair chance to get this kid. And the mother went through all the services and at the end decided she'd rather do meth and didn't want her kid. He was in jail when the adoption and everything took off. They never tried to contact him. It was way before we ever met. Well, I knew his son's name, and there was no place I shouldn't have said it, but I did. I said, well, how can you not be a son? How can you not be a father to our son, but you care so much about the one that, you know what I mean, that you gave up on? And then so that really hit something inside. And so he got up and he grabbed his phone, he threw it at my head. It shattered. It did not hit me. It almost did. Then he started shaking his fist and following me throughout the house. And he scared me up by the fireplace, and my son wasn't old enough to understand, but my daughter was screaming, stop trying to hurt mommy. Mom, what's going on? Are you okay? And everything. And they were just crying and screaming. And it was a lot of gibberish. There was a lot going on. He shook his fist and continued to scare me. He scared me out the house and locked me out the house. And I went into a panic attack. I did not call the police. But I went into a panic attack. This is when I first started experiencing panic attacks. And the neighbors saw, and it was in a very calm neighborhood, so it was not normal for this stuff to happen. So they called the police. And then the police showed up. They checked on me and everything, and then he bolted out the door and took off, escaped on a skateboard. And they asked if I wanted to file charges, and I said no. And then they put me in his grandma showed back up from church and watched the kids. And then they took me to the hospital. They took me to the hospital and they asked me if I wanted to press charges again. And I told them no. Well, afterwards, they put me in a shelter. And they said, so here's the thing. In the state of Washington, you cannot, when there's a domestic dispute of any kind, it's an automatic 3-year no contact order. It doesn't matter. The state picks up these charges. You don't have to. So it was an automatic 3-year no contact order. So I got pushed to a shelter. And my kids, the shelter is very small. I kind of got my own room, but it wasn't that great place for kids. So
how old were the kids?
They stayed with the grandma. So this time, geez, my kids were, I think my son was probably 2, maybe younger. My daughter was 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to say 3. And I just lost my train of thought.
You said that they stayed with the grandma, and you stayed in a room.
Yeah, they did. They stayed with the grandma, which was 20 minutes from the shelter. So she would take them to come visit me and stuff, and I would have them come stay the weekend. But it was really just a small shelter, and just there wasn't really anything to do. So it was just really hard.
Was the father with the kids?
No.
Where's the father?
Most of the time I don't really know what he was doing. At some point, see, that's what I'm saying. When a 3-year no contact order came into effect, we weren't allowed to contact each other, not even third parties. I had no idea what was going on. I don't know if we were divorcing. I don't know if he's with the kids. I didn't know what was going on. I knew I was keeping contact with the grandma and my kids, but at some point, and I found this when I got out of the I found this out when I got out of the shelter, because I did end up getting back with him. I found out that he had gotten a car and he started living in a car. He had gotten his license, he had gotten a car, and he started living in a car. And so he really didn't have anything to do with kids because he was living in a vehicle all night. So eventually I got out of the shelter and I worked up the nerve to drop the no contact order. They said it's not likely that it'll happen, but you can try. And so I did. I went to the courthouse and I'm shaking. And and at this point CPS was involved, but it wasn't bad. Like, they would help me with vouchers here and there. They were very nice. Not the CPS I'm used to. And I said, this is my family. I want the state to stay out of it. You know, this is my problem. Maybe I overreacted at this point. I explained that I had just been diagnosed a couple months before with PTSD. And that maybe it was me. I asked him to stay out of it. And he said, well, do you feel safe? Do you believe your children are safe? And I said, yes, my children are safe. And I feel safe. At this point, it only got a little scary, but it wasn't that bad. He never actually put his hands on me. So, I mean, a huge
today?
Huh?
Are you still married to him today?
Yeah, I can't. That's another story. I'm trying to figure out how to get a divorce for him, but something about state-to-state boundaries, they won't serve him because he's out of state or something. So I guess I actually have to go to California, which is where he is currently, file there, and then make sure that he's served before I can come back home, just to ensure that I'm actually able to get a divorce.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. But I ended up getting back with him, and at this point, his grandma said that we couldn't come back. We need to stay in a car, and I stayed in the car for a while, for about 6 months. And I saw my kids all the time. Eventually, she said she was, she was done with the kids. We need to figure something else out. And I'm still at this point trying to figure out housing, trying to figure out apartments, trying to figure out anyone to take us. And my one lead I had the manager ended up quitting, and a new manager took over, and then they denied my application. I had this manager at a point where they understood kind of what I went through, and they were going to work with me and everything on the first month's rent and deposit. And after that, I guess they quit or something happened, and another manager took over, and it wasn't the same. So I lost that lead. And so most of our fights were over things like housing and stuff for the kids and giving the kids a better life. All I wanted to do was provide them with a good life. And it's like, we're bouncing around. I can't seem to get stable no matter how hard I try. And it's like he wasn't worried about that. That all he cared about was, because we were in a legal state at the time, he was smoking weed all day, every day, and working. Yeah, he was working, but his money was being blown on, obviously, living in a car is not cheap, having to buy food and stuff that you really can't cook and stuff like that. And we ate out of canned food. It was a horrible experience. And I was like, I don't understand why you want to keep in this position. Why don't you want to get up out of this position with me? Help me find a place. Why is this not important to you? And we were getting fights over that. I find things important. Huh?
I can imagine. I can imagine being in that position and wanting to get out.
It's hard when the other person doesn't. It's like they acknowledge it, but they just, I don't know, they've given up mentally, and they're just like, well, this is where I'm at, so this is where I'm going to stay. And they don't fight to continue to get out of that. And I've always been a fighter. I've never been the kind to give up.
Right.
And he was completely opposite. Even his grandma said, when he gets scared, it's like he roll over and die mentally. So he never fought. So we just, we ended up splitting up, because he started getting really mean. we ended up putting the kids in temporary custody legally with his dad in California. And the kid stayed in California with his dad, which was great because of, I loved his stepmom. She's an amazing person. They took the kids out to do all kinds of activities. They had a pool in the backyard, which the kids loved, stuff like that. And I didn't have to worry about my kids living in the car because at this point I begged CPS. Like I begged CPS, you know, because they were good, you know what I mean, to help me out, take my kids. They can't live in the car because they were going to leave these kids in the car with me, and it was fixing to hit winter. We're nearing the end of fall, and it was going to be winter, and they were like, well, legally we can't take them, you know, foster places are full anyways. And I was like, but you're really going to leave these kids in the car with me? Like, they were like, well, we don't see that you're a bad parent, so there's no reason to take these kids. And I was like, but I can't have these kids in the car. It's dangerous. They're going to get really sick. They cannot live in a car with me. It's not okay. So I ended up putting them in temporary custody with his parents. And at least if I knew that while I lived in a vehicle, my kids were going to be okay, that's okay. So then I spent, you know what I mean, the rest of the time in winter. And I had said goodbye to my kids on Valentine's Day before I sent them off to California. And then the rest of the winter, you know, we stuck in a car, but being cooped up together and plus everything we've been through was just so much. I was crying every day. I had severe depression. I was crying every day over the kids, and I couldn't get out of this mess. And every time I tried, something would fall. And I had such good experience. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't find a job, other than it's just a small town and they're really not hiring. So it was really stressful for me, and he was just tired of me nagging about all of it. And so we would get in really bad fights. And one of the fights I remember that we got into right before I put my kids in temporary custody, they had, CPS has provided us with daycare, and the kids could go to daytime daycare. And that was good for them. And that would give them a place to go during the day, and then at night they would be with me until I could figure something out, because they didn't stay with me in the car long. I wanted to make sure they were okay. So a few days at most, they stayed in the car. Well, we would get into really bad fights, and I would tell him, don't fight with me with the kids here. The kids are in the back seat, don't fight with me. And I remember fighting over the house and everything, and I remember him telling me to tuck and roll, bitch, and then he told me to get out of the car. We were driving like 60 miles an hour. My daughter started screaming, and it was not okay. And so later, after I sent them away, we got into a really bad fight, and that was it. I couldn't do it, and I moved. At least I thought that was it. And I didn't have anyone to stay with. And he threw me out of the car. So at this point, I don't even have anywhere to live here because the shelters are full. My husband just threw me out of the car. He's claiming he wants a divorce, and now I'm on the streets. So I, again, went online, stayed with a friend of mine in line in another place, which was temporary. It wasn't that bad. It was in Virginia. I stayed in Virginia for October, December, January, about 4 months till tax time again. It seems to be a seasonal thing for my husband to throw me out and give up on the relationship and then get back tax time. But I stayed there, got a job and everything, and at a factory. Was not in a good area. Just did what I had to survive, and then eventually got back together with him. Used my last paycheck, quit my job, moved back, tried to get back with him, was supposed to fix things for the kids. And then we tried. We got a camper. It wasn't very big, but it was big enough to, the kids would have a place to sleep. It was big enough to start out on. But eventually, I can't remember why, but something happened. He lost his job. So we moved to California, where my kids are at this point. And so I thought that, we hatched a plan with the text. They said, bring your camper down here, find you a lot, we'll pay for you a lot to put your camper on and everything. We expect you to be here at 6 o'clock in the morning, because that's the time the kids wake up. You're to do all of the parent duties because these are your kids, not ours. And so we did. So I remember driving up there, and showing up, and this was one of my best moments because it was a long drive, and we showed up there, and I hid behind a pole, and when my daughter, you know what I mean, they let my daughter into the door, and they were behind her because they knew it was us. And my daughter screamed, and she was so happy to see me. And my son jumped, and he jumped on me, and they didn't see us. And so it was really great. So we took on that responsibility. You know, that was our responsibility. So we came up 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock every night, 6 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock every night. Do events with my kids, take them out. We didn't have the money, so they paid for things, you know, cooked them dinner, did everything we were supposed to, and then at the end we would go stay on our camper. Eventually, I found out around this time that, once again, I had this feeling before we left to California, but I didn't want to say anything, and I was really just hoping I was being paranoid. But I was pregnant. And I was now pregnant. And I told him, I found out on Memorial Day of 2016, I believe. And I had told him about it, and I told his parents about it, and they wanted me to adopt the baby up. And my husband wanted me to abort the baby at first. Then he wanted me to adopt it. And I don't believe in either. This is my kid, and this is my responsibility. So I told him I'm keeping it. So eventually things didn't work out there either. So we moved to a further part of California to my friends, or to his friends, and we stayed there. When we stayed there, hold on a second. Mr. Enoch, I'm getting tired of you getting into everything. Okay, sorry. But we try to make things work out there. And I ended up getting a job as a cashier at Safeway. And then he ended up going to classes to do the same thing that our roommates did, which was security guard, which is an overnight thing again. And but then they ended up moving other people in, and there were a bunch of kids. We ended up moving out to the shed, which had electricity and all that, you know. It was set up like a room, but it wasn't a lot of room. And then I had my 2 kids, and I was pregnant out there. And at this point, I wanted to better my life. I met someone at Safeway. It was just one of my customers who said that I looked like I had a great personality, and I looked like I'd be great people, and he had a great job for me, a great career. So I started training with World Finance Group, which meant 32 hours of computer classes. And I was about 6 months pregnant when this started. And then I also worked my 3 to midnight, and then I would do any client appointments, whatever time they accepted. So if it was an overnight person and they got off at like 7 o'clock in the morning, I would schedule an appointment at 7 o'clock in the morning with them because I had training appointments I needed to get done. So I was doing this and working at the same time.
Wow.
And World Finance Group is something that they kind of sell different insurances. It's basically an insurance thing. And before I joined, I got to go see the Hall of Fame where people are millionaires and are on the wall. And it would be nice to be able to have that for my kids. So that's what I wanted. And so I really, really went for it. And I almost made it, but we kept getting into it. It was just so bad. It was like there was no responsibility. I was the only one. I was 6 months pregnant. I had 2 kids, 1 on the way, no help from my husband. The roommates wouldn't take care of their kids. I came up, and she brought another friend in that was supposed to be her best friend, and she didn't take care of her daughter. She left her job interview, didn't tell anybody. And then this child, I wake up from, you know what I mean, I'm fixing to start work. I wake up, this child's running around with a knife, so I called into work. Because where's the mother of this child? And you can't leave this child alone. No one's feeding their children. There's friggin', I don't know, chocolate Ovaltine all over the floor. Like, all the kids were hungry. It was ridiculous. Nobody had been changed. And so all that responsibility, even though they aren't my kids, I felt like it falls on me because I can't sit there and witness all of this and not do anything about it. So I took on the responsibility of my kids plus 3 other kids. And I fought with the parents on it because I told them they need to step up and be a parent.
Yeah.
And it eventually got bad. He cheated on me with the roommate, which was his friend. And then her husband got into it. This explains how bad it was. My husband let his pregnant wife get drugged by her hair by his best friend. His friend's husband, like the roommate's husband. He drugged me by my hair out of the thing, and I went into a panic attack out of the room because of I had started trying to learn how to drive, but I didn't have any experience, and I had gotten stuck and on a tarp or something, and I tried to reverse out, and I dented his car. So he flipped out on me. And another thing that had upset him on top of that, because it was a Tesla, so it was a very expensive car. Another thing that upset him was me and Kenny, a couple days prior, I told him we need to go to the food bank to get stuff for the kids. And he was just really like, I don't want to go. And I'm like, look, we need to go. It's not a want. It's something that has to be done. We don't have any money. I'm barely making it with the money I have, just to get back and forth with gas money. And rent here, we need to go. And so he got in the car all mad and everything. We got into it again. He slammed on the brakes. He slammed my head into the dashboard. And then in the middle of traffic, I wasn't thinking it. So I tried to jump out of the car because it just, I don't know, my only instinct was to escape. And I didn't process the fact that we were in, there's a bunch of people around us and that this is the middle of a highway. But my only instinct was escape. So I tried to open the door. He reached across it, called me a stupid bitch, and slammed the door back. So then that was another reason his roommate was upset. Not because he had tried to hurt me, but because we had dented his car. So, and he let this happen to me. And then our next fight was, why don't you stand up for your wife? Don't you love the mother of your kids? Like, whatever this is, it needs to be fixed. Do we need to split up? Something's wrong. So, eventually, after we're all starting to get into it because he thinks my husband's sleeping with his wife, which he was. And then I know he's sleeping with her. And it's all just so obvious. All of it's so obvious. And everybody's drinking and no one's concerned about the kids. And it just all got really bad. Well, one night, the doctor said it was okay if I had a glass of wine every now and then. I was really stressed. I had stopped smoking. I stopped smoking bud because I was starting to have panic attacks from Washington on to California. I had panic attacks from my relationship. So it started triggering panic attacks. I stopped smoking. I didn't think it would be good for my pregnancy at this point if it was triggering panic attacks. So I started drinking a glass of wine here and there. And I found my favorite wine. I had a glass of wine, and you know what happens when you start to drink, you start to think. And I confronted my husband one night, and I asked him, I said, are you cheating on me? Like, what's wrong with me? Why won't you talk to me? So he tried to walk away from me. And I think I was about 7-ish months, like the beginning of 7-ish months pregnant. And I tried to talk to him. He walked away from me. So I put my hand on his shoulder and I tried to turn him around, which probably wasn't the best idea at the time. But he pushed me down. And I went into early contractions with my youngest. And then from there, he immediately took me to the hospital. And then we found out, they gave me some kind of a shot or something to stop because they said it's too early for the baby to come. So we have to give you something to stop it from happening. So they gave me something to stop it from happening. I was okay. They monitored it. They sent me back home. And then the next morning I woke up and he said, I don't want to be with you anymore. I want a divorce. So of course, I fell apart. My whole world's falling apart. How can you do this? So I only had, at this point, one option that I knew of that could possibly pan out. And I didn't know her very well, but she was part of my family. And so I thought because she's part of my family, maybe she would be a good person. So we contact with my aunt on Facebook many times. We talked over the years since I was 18, and I had met her, but I never physically met her. So she said, come to Illinois. I'll take care of you. I'll help you get on your feet and everything. Just pay me a little bit of rent every month and what you can do. And it seemed like a viable option. So I gave up on my insurance thing. I gave up on it. I was literally that close to doing it, but I gave up on it. And my insurance company, the company that I worked for, they were really nice, and they installed how he treated me many times in the parking lot and stuff. And they said that maybe it wasn't necessarily a bad idea because there's nowhere for me to stay in California, but I need to get away from him. And I wanted to make sure, which is why I would move from state to state. I wanted to get far enough that I could make it financially impossible to go back with him, because I know it's a bad idea, but I knew that I couldn't stop myself from getting back with him. So I moved to Illinois, and this is the last time that I was ever back with them, because I didn't get back with him ever since I moved to Illinois. But I moved to Illinois, and I stayed with my aunt. She turned out to be completely off her rockers. I don't know. My mom said that she was in a fire or something when she was little, and she's really messed up, and it's not her fault. But she has kids. One of them was a drug addict, and wasn't hardly ever there. Like, he came and visited like once a month, I think. And the other one was just super anxious and stayed in his room all day and played video games. Completely anti-people, had nothing to do with people at all. Major anger issues. So my aunt kept pushing me to adopt my youngest, and I was like, you can't have my child. This isn't how this works. And then her son started yelling at my kids. He was yelling things that triggered me. He said that he was going to hurt my kids because they broke his PlayStation, because he left his PlayStation out and my son stepped on the controller and snapped it. So at this point, I don't want CPS involved. So I was trying to make a plan to leave without involving them at this time. So I kept my kids safe as best as I could. And they never put their hands on them. And the last straw was when I had met a friend that at some point in Illinois, I met a friend online, and she's still my friend today. She helped me during the whole case, but she found a place for me to stay. And me and the kids went there, and we were staying with her ex-fiance. We had the kids had their own rooms and stuff like that. It was kind of a big trailer. So that was good. But the last straw was that they were fighting all the time. They were fighting over my kids, and she wanted my youngest. And then I told her she didn't even know how to take care of kids. Like, she's so mean to my kids. He's so mean. He's threatening to hurt my kids, and she's okay with this, all of this. And so he said, you want to talk about me? And I said, yeah, I want to talk about you. And so he came out of his room and tried to grab my daughter and throw her down the flight of stairs. And so at that point, I was like, no, we're done. This is it. We're going. So I found a place to stay. I think it was a month later, we were done. We left the place. Not on good terms with my aunt still to this day. Still hate her. Still a horrible decision. And we went and stayed with my friend's ex-fiance, which had a job and everything at the time. And I ended up getting a job at Sonic. Things were going good for a little bit. Moved a friend down that was on Social Security to help me out. Things got really bad there because she had been clean for so many years off of drugs, hard drugs. But when she came to Illinois, I don't know what happened, but somehow she relapsed here in Illinois. So my best friend became my mortal enemy to this day. She was like my sister today. I took care of her. She had lupus and she had hepatitis C. I cleaned up after her. I helped her with her depression. And I was working at Sonic and everything, and I didn't realize that she was, at the time, while I was at work, that she was doing hard drugs. Now, my kids at this time, they were going to the babysitters really often because I had to work, and because of the babysitter always had like cool things for them to do. They wanted to take them to the water park or take them to Missouri and go see the baseball game and stuff like that. And so I didn't have any problem with that, and that was okay. She always brought them back. She always took care of them, take them out to McDonald's. So the kids weren't here for any of this whole ordeal. So they would, they'd come home at night when I got off work, but other than that, they didn't have to see any of this, any of the drugs or nothing, which I'm thankful for. But I told them, I put my foot down and I told them there will be no more, because they ended up robbing me. And I didn't put that together till later when I started adding up stories and stuff that just didn't make sense. I just didn't want to believe that my best friend could have done this to me, and she stole like $300 from me. And I put my foot down and I said, there will be no doing drugs in this house. I've got children. You're risking my children and my life. So her and the other roommate, which was my other friend's ex-fiance at the time, started doing drugs together, and they threw me out. And so at this point, I said, the kids were the babysitters because I think they had just done an event before that. They went to Missouri a lot, like every weekend. So she always liked to take my kids out because she had 2 kids of her own at the time. So she wanted, they had friends to play with and stuff, and that was really fun. But I called a babysitter and explained what happened. And I was going to try to, get enough money, or I was waiting on a check to get enough money for South Carolina, where my brother lived at the time, and he was going to help me out. I had like a bartender job and everything set up there. He had like connections to kind of get me set up without the whole interview process and everything, just because I'm his sister and he's a really good worker. And he said, there's an amazing program for parents here. If you just come here with your kids, I can get you in. You go to this program and they'll set you up. They'll get you a 3-bedroom apartment or house, and you can have your kids and you can have this job, and it'll be really good for you. So I was going to try. The other option was, my ex-husband was horrible in a relationship. But for some reason, after we split up, he got his stuff together financially and was able to give me everything the kids needed. Like after that, he sent me $600 a month and everything up until all this started. And so the other option was that my kids would be safe with him and properly taken care of and everything, and send them back to California so I can get on my feet, because at this point I'm stuck. And I wasn't sure which one I was going to do yet. So I was waiting on a check, which didn't even come which was, okay, how do I explain this? So back when his parents had temporary custody, they had filed for food stamps and stuff like that. And when you do that, and that's not your kid, they automatically file child support. So they filed child support on me. And then when the kids were back in my custody, I filed a paper they told me to file that got me basically all the money that you paid in, they give the money back to you because now you've got custody back. So I was waiting on this check, but it kept getting lost in the mail for some reason. And I never received it. I was supposed to receive it when I moved down here in October, but then I didn't. I never received it. So I didn't receive it the day of court, ironically. So they stayed with the babysitter for about a month. At this point, they're now staying with her for a month. And I now had no place to stay. And so I was staying with my friend. We were kind of back in the car, you know what I mean? Staying at her friend's house. It's kind of couch surfing. And so I wasn't far from my kids. It was about 5-10 minutes away, drive. And then I would bring my kids. I'd ask the babysitter. I'd call her every day, and I'd ask her, like, the landlord was very picky, so they didn't want a lot of people over. So I asked her, it's okay if I come over and spend time with my kids today? Here's the update on what's going on with this situation, to get the kids here or there, or to get us over there, because I wasn't sure which one I was doing. And that was really hard for me. And then we started, I started bringing, I was bringing her, I had food stamps and cash assistance and stuff like that. So I brought her whatever she needed. I was like, you know what I mean? The kids need clothes. Do they need diapers? Do I need wipes? Do they want extra toys? Can I take them out to the mall today? what are your plans today? Are you taking everybody to the pool? Or because I didn't want to interrupt that plan if they all had plans to go hang out with their friends at the water park or something. So I would ask her. And the only reason I could not stay there with my kids was because she already had her husband, her friend, her 2 kids, and then my kids temporarily staying there. And there was already too many people, and the landlord was getting upset. So I didn't want to push them to an eviction by trying to stay there with them. So my kids stayed with her for a little bit. And then my daughter started acting out. And like I said, I told you in the beginning, I believe something's happened to her. She's admitted something's happened to her. We just don't know who has done it. But she started acting out. She started hurting the babysitter's animals. She started hurting my son sexually. Like, she would grab his private parts and twist them. And that's not okay, what was going on. So I took my daughter to a mental hospital 3 different times trying to get her help, trying to figure out what's going on with her, because I couldn't get help in Oklahoma when she was young. And so now I'm hoping she's of age, can I get some kind of help, because this is not going away, and it's obviously getting worse. And so at this point, my daughter is, I believe, 5 years old, and my son was 3 or 4. No, she was 6. She was 6, and he was 4. Well, I took her into the hospital in Springfield for a SAS, which is an assessment, a mental assessment. And then they sent me to the mental hospital. Well, I went to the mental hospital, and she stayed there a few different times. They tried different medications on her. And then there's a whole packet, I have a whole packet of it, of her story, of where her drawings and stuff. Like, some of the things she was drawing was disturbing. She kept saying she was upset by visual and audio hallucinations. So she said she's seen a man on the ceiling on fire with no head crawling on a ceiling. The fryers at McDonald's, when they would go off, she would freak out at high-pitched sounds. So the babysitter said, you've got to do something with her. Like, I can't handle her. I can't do it. Like, I don't know what's wrong with your daughter. So I tried to get her help, and she stayed there, and they said that she seemed to be okay, tried her on some medication, then it happened again, took her back. Another 2 weeks, I think, went by, back to the hospital again, because nothing got better. I took her to OSF in Peoria to try to get some help, because I've now been to the mental hospital, and I'm running out of options. You know, the medication they're doing, it's not working. If I take her back, she stays for a little bit, but then you switch the medication, and then it's just nothing's working. So I was hoping that I could get some help. Well, my daughter went in, she bit the nurse. They had to get her in like one of those toddler bed things where they zip it up all the way around so she couldn't access anybody. And I had, at this point, I believe DCFS was called, because of when I took them into the hospital for the initial issue that I had with her. I didn't realize at the time, that this is the 3rd outbreak my kids had, because when I first moved down here, I've already dealt with head lice twice. So now this is the 3rd time that they've had it, and I didn't know it. Well, when I brought them in, they had head lice. I also didn't know that there was bed bugs. The babysitter had bed bugs. So now my kids have bed bug bites. So DCFS was called. If I asked them why it was called, it's always a different story with DCFS. They never could give me a legit reason, but this is the most I could get out of all my paperwork. So with the child molestation issue and my concerns and those 2 kind of bites, they called DCFS. DCFS from Peoria came and looked and everything, and they asked if they could see my youngest. And my youngest obviously wasn't at the hospital. I left her with the babysitter. I wanted my son checked out because of my oldest had twisted his privates, and I just wanted to make sure it was physical, he was okay. And then I wanted her checked out because of all the issues I'm dealing with. So they said, well, we need to see your youngest and everything. So we drove home and then drove back my youngest so they could see that she was okay, she was healthy. And they said, well, the kids seem to be doing okay, but I'll keep in contact with you. So I asked if it was okay for my kids to stay with the babysitter right now and explain the situation. They said, yeah, that's fine. So they stayed with the babysitter. Well, we were in the hospital, I think, for 3 days. My two oldest, Callie, she, which is my oldest, she bit the nurse, and she was just kind of scrambling everywhere with her arms and legs and flipping out and cussing and all kinds of stuff. And so they zipped her up to where she couldn't contact anybody and she couldn't hurt anyone. She really couldn't hurt herself. Also, when she got mad, she did this thing with her fingernails where she would dig into her skin. And these just were not normal. These were just not normal behaviors. So I tried to go back in and see my daughter. And they said, well, you can see your son, but you're not allowed to see your daughter because we believe you're the trigger of to why she freaks out. And I didn't understand that. It upset me. And then they told me that, well, it doesn't seem like your daughter's got any issues because she's not suicidal. And I was like, well, that doesn't make sense because she's little. You know, she's got obvious issues, but she doesn't even understand what suicidal is. So you can't tell me that she doesn't need help because she's not suicidal. And so I said, I demanded some kind of help. So they kicked me out of the hospital. And then I called DCFS in Peoria and I explained the situation to a caseworker. And I said, they're saying that I'm not allowed to see my kids. You said that you're not taking my kids, so what's going on? And she said, yeah, we're not taking your kids. So I don't understand why they're doing that. Go back in and let me talk to them. So I put her on the phone with them and they said, there's no orders to take her kids or anything yet. And I don't know if there will be. So you need to let her back in to see her daughter. So they let me back in to see my daughter. Eventually we were released. And the kids were, like I said, they were approved to stay the babysitters. Then they started kind of investigating the babysitter and stuff. And on a Friday night, or it was when I got introduced to the Springfield, because Peoria and Springfield were working together. Then I got introduced to my Springfield caseworker. And she said, well, my daughter ended up going back to Lincoln Prairie, which was the mental hospital. And she tried to, I guess they tried to assist me or something. They said, well, we need to make sure that your kids have a safe place to stay. The babysitters is good, but she has already stated she cannot handle your oldest, so we need to figure something out. She can't stay in the mental hospital forever. So she was in the mental hospital, and we had to figure out where my kids were going to be released, where we were all going to go, or in their eyes, they kept trying to say, well, where's your oldest going to go? And I was like, well, if I find somewhere to go, I want to take us all there, me and my kids. And I told them, I said, I have friends that are older. My old boss from when I was a waitress to the restaurant I told you got shut down, she became really involved in my life after that and helped me out quite a bit. She knew about my oldest father and how he was, and that's why she would take my youngest and stuff sometimes, so she didn't have to experience all this stuff. So I had her, and then I had my mom in Oklahoma, and California wasn't really that big of an option at this time, but if need be, the father was there as well. So they started doing, background checks and everything on people, at least on the dad. And then they told me, they said, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to staff it with my supervisor and call you on Monday. And she called me on a Friday night. So at this point, it's about 9, 10 a.m., right when the mall woke up, and I was like, I'm going to go take the kids to the mall today. At this point, my oldest is still in the mental hospital, but my youngest is still at she's supposed to be released soon, but I was going to go pick up my oldest and then take my two youngest, with me, and we were going to go to the mall and do the bounce houses and stuff and take them out to do things. And I didn't have any money at the time because at this point, child support had stopped. So I only had my friend, and she had money, and she was like, I'll take you guys out, take the kids out to do some fun stuff. And I was like, okay. So we were going to do that, and it didn't pan out because I called the babysitter and I said, well, I want to take the kids to the mall. I'm going to go pick up my oldest and come get my youngest, and we're going to go to the mall and have some fun today. And she said, well, you can't. And I said, why? Why can't I come pick up my kids? And she said, well, because I gave them to DCFS. And I said, wait a minute. Why did you give my kids to DCFS? And she said, well, because they came by and I'm scared of them, because she's dealt with them before. And she said, I'm scared of them, and they threatened to take my kids if I didn't release your kids. So they took my kids without a court order, didn't notify me at all. Like, I found out through the babysitter. And legally in the state of Illinois, they had 24 hours to notify me. And I didn't find out till 3 days later. And so immediately at this point, it clicked that I was in trouble. So I went to the mental hospital and picked up my oldest. If they were involved with DCFS, if the hospital was, they would not have released her to me. They released my oldest to me, no problem at all. They even had said good comments and stuff about me, because I was always going to visit her and stuff there, visits. I didn't just leave her at the mental hospital. I came for visitation time and stuff. And I tried to talk to her. And I would call and speak to her, and she would call and speak to me. So they said that there's a lot of parents that would just, they leave their kids there and they come get them later. But I did a lot of stuff with my oldest. And so they always had good things to say about me. And so they released my daughter to me, no problem. And then, so at this point, I guess I'm technically trying to hide my daughter from CPS, because they keep trying to access her. They tried to, at this point, go to the mental hospital, and then they called me and asked me, well, you weren't supposed to pick up your daughter. You stole her from shelter care. And I said, what reason, what grounds did you have to take my kids? They wouldn't answer me. So I had my friend drive off, just drive around, town with my oldest, and my two youngest are in custody at this point. And I showed up at the office and I said, what grounds do you have to take my children? I want to know right now. And it was right about before close, about 4:45. And for about 15 minutes, I was yelling at this caseworker, like, what grounds did you have to take my kids? And why didn't you notify me? And she kept saying, well, we'll hash it out in court, Brittany. We don't need to do this here. Why do we need to do this here? Why can't we just, do it in court? And I said, I want to know right. This is my right. You can't just not notify me you take my children, and then not tell me why you took my children. And so she said, well, hash it out in court. So then I ended up trying to hide my daughter for 2 days from DCFS. So I went to another town, and it was about an hour and a half away, where we could stay for a couple of days, try to get my daughter's mind off of things, and before the court hearing. And it was the night before the court hearing, at like 4 or 5 in the morning. I woke up, my daughter was like on my cell phone, and she called 911. The call didn't go completely through. It was just like half a second kind of thing. And I woke up because I heard something going on. It was my phone. She was not asleep. And I asked her why she called that number, that it's only for emergencies. And she knew that. And she said, I don't want to go with anyone tomorrow. I want to come home. Bubba and Sissy are gone. And I don't want to get taken away tomorrow. And I couldn't even promise her at that point that she wasn't going to. I couldn't promise her because I didn't know what I was up against. And so I just held her, and I tried her to get to go back to sleep with me. We got ready, went to court the next morning. I went to court, and they didn't even have any evidence. They had no pictures. Their stories didn't make any sense and so it's not going to make sense when I explain it, because remember I told you at one point I was living with my aunt, but I moved because things got scary, kind of, inappropriate there and scary. Well, they claimed that there was feces on her floor and that me and the kids lived with her. And at this point, the kids hadn't lived with her for 6 months. They had not lived in that address for 6 months. I had proof. I had an electricity bill in my name. I had a police report where my money was stolen at a different address. Like, I had proof these kids were not there. And so they basically just kind of ignored my proof. And right before court, I had given my friend, which was, driving me around and stuff with my daughter, temporary custody. And we went downstairs in the courtroom to do it, like downstairs from the courthouse. And they had said that it was legal, that it was good, and we didn't have to worry about anything. And then we walked in, and they completely nulled my guardianship order. So then they said, well, Your Honor, she stole her daughter from shelter care. And we're requesting that we put her in shelter care and we make her give us her child. So at this point, my daughter was at court with me, but she was not in the courtroom. She was outside with my friend on the bench. And I said, I didn't steal her. She was released to me by the hospital. They said, yes, but we were working with the hospital. I said, well, the hospital says they weren't working with you. They wouldn't have released to me unless, you know what I mean? If they were working with you, they wouldn't have released her to me. And they said that I was lying. So the judge immediately, took their side and made me give up my daughter. They threatened me jail. They said that if I don't give up my daughter, then I'm going to go to jail. I'm going to be arrested. So I went out of the courtroom crying, and I told my friend, I said, my friend had her hands against her like this, against her back, so that hiding from my daughter behind her back on the bench, and said, no one's touching this child. And I said, you have to let her go because they're going to put us in jail, and it's going to make it harder for me to get my kids back if I'm in jail. That's just going to be one more thing I'm going to have to fight. I wasn't compliant. So then I went to jail and I was arrested, and it just looks bad. So I said, I don't want it to be any harder. Let her go. So I grabbed my oldest and I hugged her, and I told her I loved her and I would see her again, and we'd all be back together soon. And they ripped her out of my arms. And at that point, my friend said goodbye to my daughter, and we left, and my daughter was gone. And then I had to start, the services that they wanted. And the services weren't really based on anything that makes sense. Like, they weren't based on the fact that you needed, I don't know how to explain this, I'm sorry, some kind of evidence that I needed this kind of assistance. They just threw random things on me. So they were like, you need a mental health evaluation, you need ongoing therapy, medication may be needed. If prescribed, you have to take it. You have to take parenting classes. You have to have a stable home. This was it. That's all that was on my case plan. And I did all that. And still to this day, I don't have my kids home. I did everything. Unfortunately, they wanted me to stay in a shelter, and I didn't want to stay in a shelter. I didn't feel like I was going to get on my feet that way. So I moved with a friend that was an hour and a half away in out of county. I stayed with him. I did meet him online. It was not a smart choice, but he offered me, pay some rent, you know what I mean? Get on your feet. And it actually was that. It was nothing more than that this time. Out of all the times I've been mentioned this, it was different. But this time, I was able to get on my feet. I didn't have a car or a license yet, but I applied at multiple jobs. I got a job. I got my parenting classes out of the way before I got a job, so I wouldn't jeopardize my job doing parenting classes, because I knew that's what it was going to come down to. And I got a job at Kroger doing, I think, for about 3 or 4 months. It was like $8.55 an hour, just being a cashier at the gas station.
Right.
And I felt like I was doing great, and that my caseworker, you know what I mean, would be proud of me, and that I was going to get my kids back.
Right.
But I didn't, and I found a better job. Was it March? I quit March of 2018, and I got a job at HGS, which stands for Hindu Global Solutions. And it's a bunch of telemarketing stuff. But I worked for Car Gurus. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's a website that basically sells third-party cars for companies. And I worked for that company, and I every 6 months got a raise. I kept that job for almost 2 years. I lost the job right after my rights were terminated because of all my court dates jeopardized my job. So, but I got a raise. I was doing great. I started at 10.50 and then I was at 11.50 before I had quit, or before I was fired. It was kind of both. I mean, really, because it was like I have to go to court, and I'm like, does it look better if I quit or get fired? But I mean, either way, I lost the job. And I was put down as a rehire, though, so I could be rehired. So I went to court, and around the time they were doing some shady things with visits. They were saying things like, first of all, I don't know how to explain this. DCFS has a whole nother part to them that not every parent will deal with unless they have a reason for that child to be dealt with in that part. So they contract with other places that is just like DCFS. Like, it basically is, except it's for the special needs children. And so because of my daughter has these issues, she was technically a special needs. So they ended up transferring my case. But before they transferred my case to Camelot, which is the name of the center, and it was at actual DCFS, I was having issues with visitations because the visitation worker would show up like 15 minutes late with my kids and leave 10 minutes early, and I was losing time with my kids. And I only got to see them for 2 hours. And then at one visit, particularly right before I transferred, and this is the reason they transferred me, was because the visitation aide kept showing up early or kept showing up late and then leaving early. And so I started questioning her on it, and her stories kept changing. And then at one visit, they ended early, and then I stayed calm. I never freaked out during it. Oh, I did forget to tell you. I did, however, not stay calm after my kids were taken. I did go out of the courthouse, and I did have a panic attack, and the ambulance were almost called on me. But I did stay calm during the situation for my kids, and I said, "It's okay, honey." She said, "We have to go. So we're going to go. I'll see you again next week." And so my daughter lashed out. She was mad. So she grabbed the little toy car seat she was playing with, and she went to throw it at her brother. And I told her, "No, we don't do that." And I pointed at her, "No, we do not do that. That is not okay." And then the visitation aide said I hit my daughter. She said I smacked my daughter in the chest with my cell phone. And so at this point, I was trying to record them. Like, in the beginning, I tried recording them, but they withheld visits from me if I you know what I mean, try to record them. You're supposed to legally get a visitation within 24 hours of your kids getting pulled. I know that was the case in California, and I know that that's the case here. I'm not sure about other states, but I know that legally for me, that was the thing. So within 24 hours, I was supposed to get that, and I didn't. I didn't get to see my kids, my first visitation, until a month and a half, because I had to stop recording them, and every time I called them, I would record, and they hated it. And I have text messages that's proof that they were withholding my visits because of it. I even said, "Okay, I've stopped recording. Can I please have a visitation with my kids now? I've done everything that you said to do. I'm no longer recording." So at this point, I had stopped recording, so I didn't record any of this that happened in the visitation. They said there was a hotline call. And so I immediately called my court-appointed attorney, and I told her about it. And she said, "Well, we'll deal with it in a family team meeting." So we went to family team meeting, and everyone acted like it didn't happen. They acted like I was not accused of hitting my kid, that it was all in my head. Even my attorney didn't even speak up. And I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to do. And then they were like, "Well, moving past that, we're transferring you to Camelot. Here's your new caseworker." And I met my new caseworker, which we butt heads all the time. Yeah. Because my new caseworker, at this point, I decided I was going to move to Pekin, which was, an hour and a half away, and get on my feet there. The judge didn't like it. She didn't like it. They said, "Well, you're choosing to move away from your children, so you don't care about your children." That's not the case. I was choosing to move away because I didn't want to live in a shelter. I wasn't going to get on my feet there. I felt this was the best way for me to get on my feet. And it was. I was proving to them that. So I told the judge, I said, "I'm going to prove you wrong." And I did actually prove her wrong, because I did get on my feet, and I got a better job. And I started working on my license, and it took me a couple tries,
I mean, I passed the written easily, but it took me a couple tries because at this point of everything I've been through and what DCFS did, I struggle with severe anxiety. So I worry about being judged every time, all the time. So somebody, you know what I mean, judging me driving weeds me out. So I messed up a couple times. I passed the stop sign, which I shouldn't have. I went 5 miles over the speed limit. One of the things I bombed was the downhill parking. And so, but I was trying. There was effort there, and they didn't even acknowledge the fact that I was trying. And then later, I moved out of there, and I moved in with a friend. And because the person I told you that I moved in with initially in Pekin, he had given me a chance when I had nobody, and he didn't expect anything out of it. Well, he ended up losing his home because he let me stay there. So I let him stay with me and my friend because it was a big house. We were looking at a 6-bedroom house. It was not a good area. But we were fixing the home up and everything. As long as you really just kind of stayed inside and didn't really mingle with the neighborhood, you were fine. And so we had that, but my friend that I told you that kind of was there the whole time during this whole thing, and she tried to protect my kid and everything after court. She sold exotic animals for a living. This is where it gets weird. When you say exotic, some people think tigers, and that's not the case. She sold things like raccoons, and she sold things like, ball pythons and different snakes, and unfortunately different spiders. And they were all locked in cages. They were all in her room under lock and key with her door. They had the most expensive, secure safety locks on these containers for these animals. There was no way any of them could have gotten out and hurt any of us. And she sold these all her life. This wasn't something she just started. Like when we started being friends, she sold all these. She sold little baby raccoons, little baby foxes, and stuff like that. She had her proper license. And I asked DCFS, because we were sharing a place, but my kids still had their own room and they still had everything they needed. And I had a great job and everything. I didn't think that they would hold it against me because they don't like my friend and what she does. They refused to come look at my house for visitation, for me to do visitation there eventually. They refused to come look at my home at all. I tried and tried and tried. And so eventually when I figured out that they're not going to do it, I went on a date with a guy. I think it was a couple months later, and I'm still with him today. He's a very good guy, best guy I think I've ever been with in my life. And he started really helping me out. He helped me with my license. He helped me actually achieve my license. He went over it with me. He didn't yell at me when I got anxious or when I got scared. He helped me. And I got my license and I passed, and I was super excited. And it's funny because in my court hearings, people were using, all the judge and everybody, the state's attorney, they were using the fact, well, she doesn't have a license. She doesn't have a license against me. But even when I failed, it wasn't even acknowledged. But then when I did get my license, they really didn't care. It was a positive thing for me, and they didn't even acknowledge that I had my license. It didn't matter at this point. So we ended up getting a place because I realized they weren't going to do that in this house. We ended up getting a place in Canton, which is about an hour, I want to say about an hour and 15 minutes from Pekin, which is where I was staying. And about 30 minutes from my job, though, because my job was kind of like on the outside. So it was a great idea. It was like a home. It was like something that needed a little bit of work. It wasn't perfect. And, it's a very old home, but I felt like I could do it. And he had, his dad was renting the house out. So all I had to do was pay $1,200 first month's rent and deposit, and I could move in. So I did, my first paycheck. And I moved in, and I was moving up in my job, and I was doing great, and I had my license, and I wanted them to come look at this house. And I'm like, okay, so I understand that you don't like my friend, and you don't like what she does, and that's okay, so I've moved. I've moved into a better home. Can you come look at this house? So they kept saying, we'll schedule a time. We'll schedule a time. We'll schedule a time. And they never did. They kept giving me the runaround. At sometimes my caseworker tried to avoid me in visitation. Other times they would try to pull me out during visitation with my kids, interrupting the time that I have with my kids and my daughter's was cut because they said I was the trigger to all of her problems. So I only got to see my daughter this whole time from when I transferred to Camelot. I only got to see her once a week for an hour. And my 2 youngest for 2 hours. And she would always ask me, how come you get to see them more? Do you love them more? Like, how come I can't stay with you? And then I would get into it with my first caseworker, because my first caseworker was like, my daughter my oldest wrapped around my leg when it was her time to leave, and I still had the other 2, and begged me to come with. And I told her that she couldn't come with me, and that I love her and everything. And the caseworker said, she just wants attention, and you need to quit feeding her like that. Quit feeding her attention. She just wants attention. And she took my daughter off me and then put her in the car. And so I got into it with this caseworker so many times. Eventually, I had another caseworker. And then this caseworker, I was like, I really need you to come look at this house. I really need you to come look at this house. And they kept giving me the runaround. And then at one point, she was supposed to come, let's see. I'm trying to think here. I'm sorry, I'm really not good at this. I've had a lot of stuff happen. At one point, I was working with Housing Authority to try to get a house. And I couldn't, because they were withholding Social Security cards from me. Now, I had my legal rights at that time, so there was no reason they should have been able to hold my kids' birth certificates and Social Security cards from me. I had given them to them in the beginning because I thought that I was supposed to. And so when I requested them for housing, because Housing Authority had said, we can get you into a 3-bedroom, but we're going to need your kids' socials to put them on the list. And to move you up, because it's a DCFS case, and we can move you in quicker, because it was like a 2-year waiting list. And I said, okay. And I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. They refused my Social Security cards to me, and I couldn't get them. Which is why I kind of started doing my own idea of trying to find a place to live, because their idea wasn't working. And the reason that they refused it is because they said, well, we want you to get a place for you, not your kids. And that doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm trying to get my kids home. I would plan for me and my kids.
Right.
And they said, well, we want you to get a place for you. And then we can worry about the kids later. I said, that's not how this works. I've been through DCFS before. I know how this works. Don't tell me that I can't get a place for my kids. And they said, well, you're not complying. So I called her my court case aide, I guess. She's basically, she stands for parents and mediates between DCFS and the parents and stuff. And she came to 26 of my visits after I told her that they said I hit my daughter, to kind of write down what happens and everything, and to contest anything DCFS says if it's wrong. And she's been working there many years, and I called her, I explained to her, they said, they can't refuse you your socials. And I had talked to the supervisor, and me and her don't get along either. She said, there's no way this is legal. She kept calling them, they wouldn't respond to her. She emailed them, they wouldn't respond to her. So she emailed them again and said, we need a family team meeting now. I'm tired of being ignored, and you cannot withhold her Social Security cards. So we went to a family team meeting. And then at this point, my first caseworker, all of a sudden I get a text. Well, no, it wasn't even a text with her. It was a second one. With her, it was, she came in visitation. I was asking her for my Social Security cards. Don't forget my Social Security cards. And then she's like, oh, by the way, today's my last day. I'm no longer your caseworker. I'm quitting. All right, we'll no longer be here. And I was like, okay. And she did remember to give me my socials at this point. But at this point, it's too late, because now Housing Authority is completely full. And at this point, I didn't sit waiting for the cards. I tried to make more moves to get them home. So I tried to figure out a way on my own. If they're gonna withhold this from me and they're not going to help me get into Housing Authority, all right, I'm going to do it my way. So at this point, it was too late when I got the Social Security cards. Then they gave me another caseworker whose name was Chasla. And at first she seemed nice, and I thought it was going to be a good thing until I saw her true colors, and she was exactly the same. And then she what was it? Visitation. See, it was May. I'm trying to think of the year. 2018 was it? When I was working at HGS, a few days after I told you I moved into my house in Canton, we hadn't got the electric on yet, and we had called really late when we tried to set everything up. So they had said, you know, our technicians are, you know, they're home for the day, so they're not doing any more turning electric on until Monday because it was a weekend. I was like, okay, all right. So we were gonna do without electric for 3 days. Well, we had a generator. So we turned the generator on and we pushed the generator outside of the basement. Well, at some point, and I don't know who or why, but at some point, somebody pushed the generator back into my house. The first house that I just moved into, and I woke up sick, head pounding, and I instantly knew, because at first I thought it was just because I struggle with nausea from anxiety and stuff, so I thought it was just anxiety. It wasn't. Me and my boyfriend ended up being in a gas leak. So I woke up head pounding, nauseous, can barely move, everything's blurry, and it's like I could hear my heart beating out of my chest, and it was so loud. So I knew something was wrong, so I instantly woke him up. I said, get up, there's gas in the house, get up, get out. So we're struggling trying to get to the door, and I got out. I blacked out trying to get to the neighbors to get to help. He blacked out trying to go back and get the phone, call 911. He tried, but he couldn't see. It was all just messed up, so he was dialing random numbers, and then he blacked out. Then I came to, and I was at a hospital with a nurse digging her fist into my chest. And they told me, you've got twice the level of carbon monoxide in your blood. Your boyfriend drove you here, even though he's messed up on the levels too. He was able to drive you to the hospital. Although the hospital was down the block, so it was not far. He sped me there. And they said, but we don't have the equipment to take care of you. So we're gonna have to care flight you to Iowa Hospital. So they did. They care flighted me to Iowa Hospital. And by the way, the cops took my boyfriend to jail while I was basically dying in the hospital because he had a warrant for like no insurance and failure to pay fines, and they saw him speed me to the hospital. So they let him take me to the hospital, but then after that, they took him to jail. So I thought that was really messed up. So then I ended up in Iowa, and I had to go in a hyperbaric chamber, which is a huge oxygen tank room. And they had to put holes in my eardrums so that my eardrums wouldn't blow when I went in there because it's very loud. The oxygen just gets to a certain point or something that messes with your hearing. And so I had to do that for 4 hours a piece, twice a day for 3 days. And I had to get nausea meds and all this because I had all these problems after this. And anyways, after I came back home from Iowa, and he did drive there and everything to be with me during all this. But after we came back home from Iowa, I started having memory problems. And I never told DCFS about the gas leak because I was afraid that they would hold it against me more. Because it wasn't the house. It was a generator that got pushed back in, and it wasn't supposed to happen. It just did. And I started having memory problems. So the therapy that I had started in Pekin, when I had started working and everything, I started missing appointments, and it was kind of like day by day. I wasn't even thinking. At this point, I was working 16-hour shifts at my job, and I was battling trying to remember how to do my job because things just weren't processing in my head. I still have memory problems. They're not as severe. It's more annoying than anything, though. Some of the things that happened to me in my relationships, I don't remember that. And it really kind of affected me. It affected my long-term more than my short-term. And I missed a few appointments. I missed 2 appointments. And I was working a lot too, though. I was working 16 hours back to back. They had overtime. So I was excited. And so I told the caseworker, you know, when I had missed my appointment, and there's a thing, the original therapy place that I went to would not work with me. And so I missed the appointment because they would not work with me on another time. I tried to remake the appointments up, but I couldn't because they just weren't open that time. But they had another center that was. And so
I ended up going to that one later. But I missed a couple appointments, and I explained to the caseworker that I'd been working 16-hour back-to-back. I kept the gas leak out of it, and I was afraid that they would just have more ammo against me, honestly. And they said, that's okay, we're gonna figure out something, you know. I said, look, I don't want to be in trouble because I missed these 2 appointments. And she said, we're gonna figure it out, you know, I'll figure out something, I'll talk to my supervisor, we'll call therapy, we'll look around for other therapy places, you know, don't worry about it. Just spend time with your kids and everything. And I was like, okay. So at this point, Mrs. Chancellor, I thought she was going to help me. A couple weeks go by, I'm still not back in therapy. She's supposed to be helping me figure this out. And I had scheduled a time for her to come look at my house, and she kept canceling all the time. Well, finally, she made it. They kept canceling all the time because of family emergencies. But she finally showed up, and I was so excited. Like, I just painted the house. I just remodeled the bathroom. Initially, it was a really big room for my kids, so I split it into 2 bedrooms. I just painted my kids' bedroom. My daughter had purple and glitter all over the place, and my son had more of like DC characters. And I was trying to do like a Marvel versus DC in his room. And so I was really excited for them to see this. I got, you know, nice beds and everything for my kids. I was really excited. I only had necessities. I had, you know, dressers, clothes, food, shelter, beds, stuff like that. But I did not have extra stuff. I didn't have a PlayStation 4. I didn't have a stereo system. I didn't have karaoke. I didn't have flat screens. I didn't have a TV at all. And she showed up, and I'm thinking, I'm going to show her this house. You know, she's going to be so proud of me. I'm going to be able to get my kids home. And that's not how it goes. She shows up, walks through the house with me 1 second, walks back out and says, because we were going to sit down in the living room, and she goes, can we go outside? And it's like, okay. Like, what's wrong with my living room? So we walk outside, and she goes, well, actually, I'm just serving you termination papers. So the day that she was supposed to look at my house, she gave me termination papers. She said, well, it looks like we screened you back in July. And I was like, how come nobody notified me that I was screened for termination? And they said, nobody has to notify you when you're screened for termination. And they said, and it looks like you passed for the termination, so we're going to go ahead and terminate your rights. Have a good day. And she left. And then from there, I flipped my credit upside down, because when I first started in Pekin, I started getting loans, and I started making money, and I started raising my credit, and I was doing good. But then at this, I flipped my credit upside down. I screwed myself up with the electric bill. All the money that I had available that wasn't even really available, that was for bills or for loans, I took that money and I put it into an attorney immediately to get help. And this attorney was a family friend, and he's always done amazing, and he still doesn't know how he lost my case. And I got him at the end, and he said that they did a lot of stuff that he wishes I would have had him in the beginning, because of none of this would have flown at that point. But they did a lot of stuff that cannot be undone that was illegal, but it's too late now because it's past the time frame. And so he's like, we're gonna, you know what I mean, we've got this, we've got so much evidence, we've got pictures and everything. But then when we went to trial, the judge would tell me to shut up, first of all. And I would never get to speak. And second of all, it was like every time my attorney would object to something, they would just tell him that it doesn't matter, and then it's thrown out. Like, anything he had to say didn't matter. It didn't matter that I paid for my own drug test results, and that when I couldn't provide a specimen because they were jeopardizing my job at some point, and they were like, well, you need to go randomly work. And I was like, I can't just randomly leave work and go do a drug test. It's not how my job works. So I couldn't provide a specimen because I was so stressed out, and I've had a history of UTIs and anxiety, and someone was watching me, and I just couldn't do it. So at this point, I went and paid for a hair follicle myself. My money was $150. And I got the test results. They didn't even want to show my drug test results in court. Like, they didn't even care to look at them. that they were clean and that I don't do drugs, because they filed child support and drug test results on me near the end as soon as they went to terminate rights. I guess so that maybe they had a fallback or something. So I ended up paying child support on my kids too, which is really messed up when you're trying to get your kids back. But the judge was against me from the beginning, and I had witnesses, so I thought I had a chance. My court advocate, I told you, that showed up at my visitations and whatnot and tried to get my socials back. She stood up on the stand and she said, Your Honor, I was in a family team meeting and they never planned on giving her kids back, ever. Their plan was to leave her in the shelter. The judge just threw it out completely. And then I told you one of the things on my plan was a psychologist thing, psychological evaluation. I did that. I flew through the education part. They said I did great there. But when I got to the interview, he had always said to me, he was trying to, I guess, write down my story. And as you can see, telling you I have such a complicated life, it's hard to even put it in sequence. So I tried to tell him, and he kept mixing it up. He's got this father mixed up with this father, and this didn't happen, and I don't know where he got this information, so I keep trying to correct him. So eventually he got mad at me after correcting him 3 times, and after this point, I'd already been there for 6 hours for the education portion. He threw me out and said the interview's over. I didn't get that paperwork because everything was withheld from me until I got my actual attorney. So I didn't see this until trial. And then I saw all the evidence they actually had against me. And I didn't see it, so I couldn't correct it. I did write the day before, you know what I mean, a letter to the psychologist once I found out about it, because there were certain parts of my trial, and I think my trial went on for 3 different hearings. So I wrote him that he needed to fix it and everything that was incorrect. He had on there that major discrepancies. He said that I had lost custody to my oldest child, who would have been at that point 12 years old or something. And I only had 3 children, which were in custody. I did not have 4 children. I've never had 4 children. He said that my brother died in a car wreck. He said that, which my brother's alive in South Carolina. I've never been in a car wreck. He said that I've lived in a mental hospital, and I've never lived in a mental hospital. I've never been to, like me, admitted to a mental hospital. I've been to regular therapy sessions where I voluntarily, to help my own mental health, went once a week for my anxiety, but that's it. It was never anything more than that. And he lied. And he had my kids' birthdays wrong. He had the fathers wrong. And even with all these major discrepancies in court, they still took everything that he said to heart. And this is the basis that basically closed my case on the termination hearing. And it was the psychologist, and my therapist said that I was doing great in therapy and that she thought I was doing good. She was teaching me these different methods of dealing with my anxiety and how to compartmentalize things in my head so that I don't freak out so much and I can organize better with my anxiety. She said that I was doing great, and she thought that I had the great ability to parent and everything like that. And then they just threw her out completely. Like she didn't matter. So even the witnesses that I had, everything just got thrown out like it didn't matter. And I didn't fall apart in the courtroom. I knew better. I mean, you could see that I was shedding tears, but I remember Gal, which was, I believe, my children's attorney. She had stood up, and the state's attorney had a point to stand up, and then my attorney had a point to stand up. And Gal and the state's attorney both said the same thing, both agreed. And they said, well, Your Honor, we've been waiting for many, many years, it sounds like, for Brittany to get on her feet. And now, I don't think we should have to wait any longer. And I was like, but I just got my license, and I just got a home, and I'm finally on my feet now. And they're not even giving me a chance. They never planned on giving me a chance from the beginning. Even with the evidence of the lady that's licensed for 26 years instead, they never planned on giving her a chance, which, by the way, she lost her job after that. And that may have something to do with my case.
And so they terminated my rights. And then we went to the best interest hearing, and they claimed that I had no bond with my children, that I never brought my youngest food, that I only fed them cookies and candy. They didn't bring up the facts that I spent over $300 for Christmas and birthdays, and just because Valentine's Day, stuff like that, for my kids, for gifts and birthday parties. They didn't bring any of that up. Nothing positive. I brought my kids dinner one time. They got mad and said, well, you could poison it, so you can't bring them dinner no more. So I didn't make dinner anymore. So then I did like Lunchables or whatever. I could really make sandwiches. And that's it. I did fruit and stuff. They never really got candy except Christmas. Christmas, they got a stocking with candy. But I'm pretty sure the foster parents, took most of that away. But I mean, I brought in boxes. I spent so much money on my kids, home and at visits. And I didn't deserve this. I'm still fighting today. They took them in 2017. We're now in 2020. And I'm still fighting these people today to try to get my kids back. I did appeal it, and through the appellate court, because that was recommended by my attorney. And it was a mess too. I was appointed a court-appointed appellate attorney, and I lost that too. And he put up an amazing argument, the same kind of argument that my trial attorney did, and I still lost. Even with all the evidence there that I've obviously got my life on track. I really thought when I got my license, I had a chance in life. And then after that, I lost my job and stuff, and I started becoming an independent contractor worker. I started digging more into that and doing things for me because I need to be able to deal with this whole thing. I've currently filed a suit on them, and I haven't got an update on how that's going yet. It's just in the beginning process, but I've got high hopes because I have so much evidence, and
You've been
even
through
if
a
it's
lot.
not, yeah.
You've been through a lot. Your kids have been through a lot. And it just sounds like all you've needed is a boost to get going.
I did. And now I'm at this point in my life to where I'm working with credit repair. My credit's going up again. And I'm fixing to do a rent-a-home house. It's like a $300,000 home. And I'm looking at different homes, so I don't know which one I want yet. I'm getting one in Springfield where they're located. And I'm an independent contractor. I make my own money. Don't have to apply to any boss. I've got great customer service skills, so it works out great for me. I make great tips. And so now I'm at this point where everything is perfect in my life. Like, I've got a great boyfriend and everything, which he tried to be in my visits. Like, he gave them the background check and information and his social and everything, and they never did it. They never had any intentions of sending my kids home. So they never had any intentions of letting him be any part of my visits. So he's never even met my kids. But I've got this great man, and I feel like I've got my life on track, and my kids are gone. And it's like, I'm planning for this house that I'm moving into. It's a 4 or 5 bedroom rent to own. So I'm going to be paying on that probably for a while, at least 10, 15 years. And yeah. I'm 20 years old. I got my license 2 years ago at 26. And it's like, I think my biggest fear is moving into this house and my kids are never going to come home. And I'm just going to be walking around looking at all these empty rooms where they shouldn't be empty every day, which is just, it really hurts my heart. And
right.
I didn't really know what real depression was until after I lost my appeal. And I try to shut my emotions down because I don't want people to think that I'm, a mental case or something. But there's some days where it's so hard. This week particularly, I haven't had much motivation, and it's not good. Like, I haven't had much motivation. I don't sleep well anymore. I wake up with anxiety attacks. I have dreams of my daughter and my son and my youngest not remembering me, or it's really messed up. And I don't, how do you fight these people? There's no way. I've tried like every way. I've went to the OIG, and they were supposed to do, they were supposed to investigate. I came in there with my case, I explained what happened. I thought they agreed with me, but then they sent it to Chicago, and then Chicago said that it wasn't their jurisdiction to look at. Then they sent it back to Springfield, then they sent it back to Chicago, and then Chicago decided we're just not gonna look into it. So nobody looked into my case. And it's messed up. Like, my case is it's so messed up. And even like, I even tried contacting the governor office, which here we have Governor Pritzker, JB Pritzker, and he never responded to me.
What state are you in?
Illinois. So I tried contacting Governor Pritzker. Well, finally, after 3 times of emailing him, I finally got a response. So I'm thinking it's him, but it's not. They're saying, well, this isn't our issue. This is a child DCFS issue. I think you should go to the OIG. And at this point, I've already went to the OIG, and they've done nothing. And I explained to them that. And they ended up calling me, and they said, well, what the judge says goes, period. And I said, but none of this is illegal. There are people that committed perjury in court. How are you going to tell me that this is okay just because the judge says it's okay? And they said, well, then you should appeal. And I said, I lost the appeal. And they were like, well, there's nothing you can do. That's it. Case closed. So, I mean, I've tried everything. I've tried contacting President Trump. I haven't received any response from him yet. It's very hard to contact these people within the government too, especially with so much going on with the coronavirus and everything. They're just preoccupied. I don't feel like I get a fair chance. My biggest hope though is with my suit that I'll get denied in state court and I'll get to federal. Because if I get to federal court, I can show all my evidence. And I feel like I'm gonna get a fair chance in federal court versus state court.
Yeah.
But the scariest part is I do not have an attorney. I'm doing it pro se.
Well, I mean, I wish you luck. I can't wait to hear what happens. I hope you get your kids back. You know, you've been through hell. I'm proud that you've gone so far in life and you're not giving up. You are quite accomplished now from being held back so many times. And I just hope you keep going, and you know, the kids are going to know that you're trying and you're doing it for them.
I mean, I hope so. I'm trying to get better and better financially. One of the things that got thrown in my face was that I didn't have enough furniture in trial, which doesn't even make sense. They said, well, she doesn't have enough furniture.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that got used against me. And then what got rubbed in my face was my daughter now has her own horse, my oldest does. And it's like, how do I compete with that?
It's not
It's hard.
necessity. It's not a necessity.
It's not, but all my necessities got, like, it didn't matter in court. You know what I mean? Like, they were like, you need all this extra stuff. And it's not fair to make the parent who loves their children and has done everything for their children and wrongfully taken away in the first place, to feel like they're competing with the foster parents. It's not okay.
I get it.
I've been through a lot, and I've really tried to keep going. It's really hard. I've actually got my real experience with depression started in October, and so now I deal with, you know, severe lack of motivation, sleeping problems, and crying all day, or just at a stoplight just breaking down. And then I have to wipe my tears away, smile, and pretend to be okay to drop my order off, because that's what I do.
I get it. Well, Rose, I hate to go like this, but I do have to go. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you for hearing me, because it's a long story, and I don't tell many people because it's so long and hard to understand.
I get it, and a lot of it feels unbelievable, or it feels people question and make comments, and that's not my job on here. It's just to allow you to share your story, and I'm glad that you did. You know, I know a lot of people probably feel like they've have a story like yours where they just keep hitting a bottom, and it's like no matter how hard you try, somebody is always there to kick you back down.
Yeah.
Well,
I one thing I want to show you real quick though. Hold on. Let me see here. This is something that I still have from my visit with my oldest. My two youngest didn't get to make me anything, but my oldest made me this in class and before my rights were terminated. And this is something that I keep with me to keep me going every day. It's a ceramic necklace. Unfortunately, it's heavy, so the chains keep breaking on it, but this is something that I keep on me every day to keep me going so that I don't quit, because it's gotten very hard.
I love that.
I do for my children. But thank you for hearing my story. I'm sorry it's kind of long.
No, please don't apologize. Thank you, Rose. I'm so sorry. Please keep in touch so I know what happens in your case.
I will. I'll update you on everything.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.